Hello and welcome to In Conversation with the Doctoral College. I'm Dr Deborah Curiton, I'm the Research Development Manager at the University of Wolverhampton.
And I'm Dr Ben Hannigan, I'm Director of the Doctoral College.
Today's vlog, we're going to talk about the technicalities of the thesis. So you've completed your thesis, you're ready to submit. What do you need to know? So in this vlog we're hoping to cover printing, binding, all those things that you need to know about the margins, typeface, print, line spacing, and all those things that are going to take a little bit of time that we often overlook.
And possibly even a bit of money.
Yes, okay. So in terms of money, first of all, if you are a postgraduate researcher at the University of Wolverhampton, you will have on your green card, so you will have a green version of that. You should have some print credits that you get annually. So, you know, you will have print credits towards the printing of your thesis. You do need to print off enough copies of the thesis for all your examiners. So if you are a member of staff at the university and you have 3 examiners, you need to print off 3 copies of the thesis, and obviously a copy of the thesis for yourself as well. And obviously if you've got 2 examiners, 2 copies of the thesis. And those need to be bound. They don't need to be hard bound, do they? They need to be soft bound, and you can choose the type of soft binding that you want to use. You can use a spiral bound, you can use a cone bound, as long as it holds the thesis together. So that said, what are the things that trip people up when it comes to the technicalities of the thesis?
I think often time.
Yeah.
Because suppose your deadline is a Friday.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be, but many people will still be writing the final bits on Tuesday, Wednesday, or waiting to hear back from their supervisor who might only tell them last thing, you know, this kind of thing. So I would say don't assume that you can just tear into the library or what have you, print out your copies, get them bound in the space of a couple of hours. It may take a bit more time. Some theses are quite large, not so much in terms of word count, but there may be an appendix, there may be lots of graphs, you know, things like that. So actually binding them, even if it's paperback or spiral, can be a bit tricky. I mean, you have seen them, sometimes they're done in 2 volumes, so they're not falling apart at the seams. So, and you know, printers break, pen drives corrupt, photocopiers jam or run out of ink, or endless technical problems can occur. So I would say that you really mustn't just leave it to the last minute. You know, give yourself at least a day or 2. In fact, why not, you know, if your deadline is Friday, why not try and aim to submit on Thursday, because that way if there's some technological problem you can overcome it. So the first thing is, you know, don't just assume you can tear it and just print it all out and it's all fine. Give yourself a bit of time. And I think as well, you need, I think at any university, to pay quite careful attention to what's in the research student handbook in terms of those things you mentioned already, Deborah. Margins, print size, font. I mean, obviously we spend a lot of time worrying about citations and is this correct, but you'll find that they have quite precise instructions about double spacing, about headings, and you know, stuff like that. So you need to have all that down. Also, you know, what's on the cover sheet. Most universities will have something like the title, your name, and then the year, and then some formulation which would be presented in part fulfillment for the degree of PhD or something like that. Yeah. So in the back of handbooks it will say what should be there. Yeah. Beyond that, there needs to be a declaration often of originality. Yeah. Some universities will have things for you to sign, maybe even for your Director of Studies to sign. There should also be, and this is quite tricky, a table of contents where the page numbers match the actual contents. So if you say section 5 starts on page 80, by the time you've printed it out, it might actually start on page 81. Unless you've locked it into a PDF or who knows what, you know. So there can be a bit of slippage, so you've got to be a bit careful. And you mentioned as well having a copy for yourself, and that copy must be identical to the copies that go to the examiners, because otherwise they'll be saying, let's look at this comment on page 400 and it's not on your page 400 and
you spend ages
yeah, exactly. So there's all of these like irritating minor last minute problems, and you need to give yourself some time because you'll be exhausted anyhow. So why add further stress to it by discovering that the shop in town you were going to kind of bind it is having a sort of half-day closing that day, so because all of those things happen, don't they?
At the University of Wolverhampton, you can pay the student union to help you bind. The binders are available for student use in the library, so you can go into the union shop and you can buy the spiral bounds or the clip binds there are a number of different types of binds that you can use. So you can do it yourself. I always say practice before you start. So as you find that if you puncture the wrong end, people can't open the pages of your thesis. So make sure that you are practicing. Make sure you have got your margins right, because if you put a spiral bound into something where the margins are too short, you're going to cut off the first few letters of each sentence, which is going to make it more difficult for your examiners to read.
But very occasionally examiners complain about that.
Yeah.
Because usually it's fine 95% of the time.
Yeah.
But in the few cases where someone has done something like that, they will really complain about the presentation. And in fact, one of the considerations for the examiners is the presentation to a satisfactory level. And this is a minor thing about the margin size. So don't let it turn the examiners against you by calculating it incorrectly.
The margin sizes for Wolverhampton, as you said earlier, are in the handbook. But Wolverhampton are a little bit flexible in terms of the type of font that you use, as long as it's a legible font. Again, with the line spacing, as long as it's consistent. We usually suggest that it's at least 1.15, and that the font size is the equivalent to, is it times Roman 12?
Okay, that sounds about right.
And that you can choose whether or not you print on both sides of the paper. It used to be that we said you could only print on one side, but you now are allowed to print on both sides, as long as you use a good quality paper. And you should be consistent throughout the thesis. So don't have 1.15 in one chapter and double line space in another chapter. Make sure they are all consistent.
Definitely. But at the end of the day, if there's some problem consistency you can't resolve, so if there's 1.15 but then some sentence is 2, you know what, who cares? Just whack it in. There'll be a chance to change it after the Viva. Yeah. I think another thing would be, and I'm surprised at how many people go through this process and submit it, and then the next week they're calling up the STAR office and they're saying, I've realised that chapter 3 was missing. And I need to submit chapter 3, and this causes trouble. So when you have the printouts, go through it, check why pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's not that page 5 was mangled in the photocopier and we didn't see it again. So please check all the pages are there. A friend of mine has this belief that if you have a blank page before the actual thesis begins, then it reminds examiners of a chocolate box, because they take away the piece of card or paper to reveal the chocolates, so that this puts them in a good mood. It gives them a sense that they're going to enjoy.
It's a quality product.
It's a quality product, yeah. So maybe you could do that. I don't know.
Okay. So tips on what not to do.
What not to do? Don't do it at the last minute.
Yeah.
Don't just print it all out, bind it all up, chuck it in, assume that it's okay.
Yeah.
Don't assume that the STAR office are necessarily going to be lined up with a red carpet for you to turn up and receive the thesis. Phone them up 2 days before. Say, I'm going to come in on Friday, about 2 o'clock, is that all right? And, make sure that that's okay. I mean, it will be, but there's no harm in doing that. And then I guess the other thing is just don't add extra stress to your life by not giving yourself the space and the time to check everything.
For me, from my own experience, don't spell your name wrong. I managed to call myself Deborah Houghton And I had to print out the first page again, and that was very stressful because I had to kind of take it out and open up the binding and put it back on again. So check things and double check things, because you'll see it the way you think it's written. And the final thing from me is, do make that appointment with the STAR office so that they do know that you're coming in with it, because the last thing you want to do is to turn up and you need to submit on Friday to find that they closed at 4 or something.
Or staff training day or something.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'll add one more thing actually, which I think is quite important, which is if your supervisor says to you that the font is 12, or somebody you've met in the library says it has to be, you can't print on both sides. I don't believe any of that. Just check the handbook where it's really clear. It's on one page. Yeah. Just go by the handbook. Don't go by what someone's told you.
And when you do submit, take a photograph of yourself with your thesis and tweet it to us, because we love to see when you're submitting. We will retweet it and we will look out for you. And obviously wish you good luck with your Viva. So thank you very much for listening. As always, please do follow us, subscribe to our channel. You'll get an update when we release new vlogs. We release new vlogs every Friday. So watch out for new vlogs coming out. And if you've got any suggestions for vlogs, please do put them in the comments below. We love to hear from you. So thank you very much for listening. Bye.